podcast at a point that we decided to delve into on this side. So where we were, you wanna introduce where we were and start us there, D?
That wasn't that right there.
It was not, was it? As a matter of fact, I think we're done there. We're done there. That was okay. Here we go. So,
Nope. Still looking.
right. Free speech attacks in the U.S. Free speech, hate, and history lessons.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We are getting there, slowly but surely. Tennessee bans teaching critical race theory. Okay, we're there, but this wasn't the article we were looking at. So, that's hate speech. And,
The second.
yeah, I'm going to close some of these that we don't need out. History and censorship, yeah.
Like one more over.
That's wiki. So, there we go. Freedoms, this. Where's the one that we were looking at? This was it, wasn't it? No, we were looking at, I remember now.
This is the ACLU.
Indeed. This is where we were. Okay. So, yeah, so why don't you light this fire?
Light the fire. All right. Okay, this is from the ACLU. We're talking about what is critical race theory and why has it come under fire.
And before, if you don't mind, before you delve into that, cover that first paragraph because I think that's a good summation. Our First Amendment's right, because as I mentioned in the other one, this takes a very unique angle on it. So this angle is, I kind of struggle with the angle, the perspective, but yeah, go if you wouldn't mind starting there.
Okay. All right. Our First Amendment rights to read. Our First Amendment rights to read, learn, and discuss vital topics in schools are under attack. Since 2021, 10 states have passed classroom censorship bills that restrict discussions about race and gender in schools. In 2022 alone, state legislatures have introduced 111 new bills across 33 states, many of which explicitly target K-12 schools. These attacks come at a time when various groups, including state lawmakers and local school board officials, are simultaneously pushing to ban books from school and public libraries, primarily books by and about BIPOC, LGBTQ people, and other marginalized groups. Okay, and then what is the critical race theory and why has it come under fire? Critical race theory, or CRT, is an academic and legal framework focused on how systemic racism is deeply ingrained and shapes American society. The term critical race theory has been co-opted by opponents as a catch-all term to apply broadly to classroom discussions about race and racism, gender identity, sexuality, and sexism. For example, under the guise of banning CRT-related discussions, some legislators have broadly prohibited discussions of conscious and unconscious biases or have attempted to ban the 1619 Project, 1619 Project, a book detailing the history of slavery and its lasting impact in the U.S. from schools. At their core, anti-CRT laws are thinly veiled attempts to silence discussions of race, gender, and sexuality amongst students and educators. These laws suppress free speech and deny people the right to an accurate, complete, and inclusive learning environment.
Okay, so before we move into this, because the next one's which states, right?
Yeah.
So before we get into that, let's volley this around a little bit, because like I mentioned, this is not the angle I was expecting to stumble upon when I was looking for sources on the attacks on our freedoms of speech, right? Yet, nevertheless,
this is actually new to me. I've never heard
CRT.
Yeah, I never heard of that.
I'm familiar with it, and so the idea Tennessee has legislated against it, and it's interesting to hear them describe it the way that you just read it, because it's positioned as this assault on freedom of speech and this assault on people's ability to accurately understand the world we live in, and educators' inability to effectively communicate those realities. The problem is we stumble into what you and I were talking about originally, which is, what is the state's role in educating kids about issues, specifically cultural issues at large, even healthcare issues, mental health issues, and what is the parent's role? So the challenge with this is Tennessee has placed a ban saying that CRT is not allowed to be taught, and that educators are not allowed to engage. And the reason is because it was found that it had been being taught for multiple years, and the challenge with it is multifaceted.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the ban.
Right. It's multifaceted. So there is an issue with the fact that this is not a freedom of speech issue. I apologize to the people who wrote this and clearly see it a different way, but whether or not they're allowed to talk to my kids about things that I reserve the right explicitly to educate them on is not a matter of my children, who are minors, freedom of speech, nor the educators who my tax dollars pay to educate the children.
Right.
Their job is not to ideologically inform or to educate them in the ways of understanding how they want my kids to see the world. Their job is to educate them on the subjects that we as a society agree to pay them as teachers to communicate and educate on. And it is not for them to assume that the parents should have this position, and if they don't, they will take it upon themselves to educate them.
Right.
There are a number of issues I see with it. And I think we've hit the main backbone of it, which is, as a parent, I just do not consent, and as a minor, my children cannot consent. It is my consent that is required for my children to be taught or educated in a specific way on specific topics. As an example, I don't care how benevolent or benign the teacher is. I don't want a 40-year-old gym teacher teaching my children about sexual intercourse, and that's probably not the best example. Intercourse I'm okay with, but even then, I still want some.
Hopefully not a gym teacher.
That's my point. That's my point. You remember when we were in school, it was sort of like double duty. The health class was also the PE teacher's domain. And the health class was where you had classes like...
It was more like hygiene.
There was hygiene and stuff like that, but there was also sex ed. And you remember the banana and showing how to put condoms on? And did you not
No,
attend that class?
A little bit differently.
Well, don't go there. Don't be creepy. I guess what I said was creepy. No, so the point that I'm making is that there is and I mentioned this earlier, there is a scientific element and component to this that I don't know why anyone would disagree with it being taught. That's what we're paying the teachers to do, is to teach, sciences and health, and if it's an economics class, economy; if it's a social studies class, then sociology, etc.
Right.
But there's a difference when you show, for example, the idea of critical race theory. Critical race theory is something that I don't know how to articulate it succinctly. It is a collection of ideas and positions that characterize, and I'm gonna take a stab at explaining it in layman's terms, right? With my lay understanding of it, and just for people listening, and for you, just to give it a nutshell, a 50,000-foot view. The idea is that there are realities in this world that exist when it comes to race and ideology and gender and sex and sexuality that may not have been within the realm of legislative reach 50 years ago, in the 50s and 60s. We had a very different cultural environment 50 and 60 years ago. We didn't have we didn't have a public acceptance of any form of homosexuality at large. There was no legislation in place that allowed gay marriage. There wasn't any legislation in place to protect historically marginalized groups, whether we're talking, and I'm specifically not going to include BIPOC in that, because what I'm going for there was, let's talk about transgender and intersex rights, and that's where I'm leaning on that aspect of it, because the main core of the point that I'm want to get into, or what I want to point out, does have to do with BIPOC, and I think that CRT, in my opinion, right, and I could be wrong, but from what I have seen and what I have read, because as soon as I found out this was being taught, I immediately went and researched the fire out of it, because my kids are in school, and I wanted to know what it is they're being shown and how it's being presented.
Yeah, I know you definitely did more research than me, because I haven't, like I said, I hadn't heard, this CRT.
Yeah.
And this, from what I can see, just simply, it just,
Yeah.
to me, it's kind of teaching the kids like what's holding you back.
It does seem to be that, and even when you start talking about, let's venture into BIPOC, and when you talk about black and the black community in America, I can't make critiques or summary judgments as far as, oh, this is what I think about being black in America. I'm not black.
Yeah, it's not the subject.
That's right. That's not
yeah.
what I'm trying to do. What I've seen, however, out of CRT, is I did not like the way that it positioned a young person today that otherwise wouldn't necessarily have been, from what I could tell. And I ran into this with my kids, right? Like, what are my kids going to be taught, and what are they being exposed to?
Mm-hmm.
It was my kids didn't have a conceptualized idea of racism existing in America in a way that was this pervasive, overhanging thing that we all need to recognize and introduce legislation to account for, so that we can protect the people who are being marginalized and victimized. And again, that is a huge oversimplification of the issue. I'm not trying to demean it, and I'm not mocking it. I'm saying I saw it as this situation where I distinctly remember thinking, okay, I don't want my children to see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I want my children to see that there have been historical injustices, that there have been things that required massive group fights and legislative measures that took years and decades to implement and to work out and figure out how it was even possible to start to remedy.
Yeah, you got like what your history,
Right.
Political science,
Right.
things like
Right. And so I wanted very specifically to not poison my kids with the idea that things are the way that they always have been. Now, that doesn't mean, you and I have been talking about Germany, right? Because around the same time, I got interested. I'm like, well, I wonder how Germany handled this. How did Germany handle the fact that they have new generations of kids coming up, and they have dealt with the fact that they're all have a shameful past, right? A past that was not something that you would be proud to teach about. And the research I did, I found that they have communicated with each group of kids and have been doing it since the war, since World War II, communicating with them at an age appropriate level about things that occurred, even dark things that should not have occurred, and used that education as an arsenal to prevent the same thing from happening again.
Yeah, if you don't learn from the past, you do
Right.
repeat it, right?
Especially if you don't learn from it because you're forgetting it. That's right. And so while the answer is never to forget it, the answer is to learn from it. To say we have to be better than that, and we can take the failures of the past and use those to more effectively work towards successes in the future. And so it was this. And again, I'm not saying, oh, look, CRT is just completely racist. It's completely horrible, and I
Right.
don't. I'm not an expert on CRT, but I did have to buff up enough to be able to communicate with my children about it, to be able to distinguish what it is that I want them to have as a takeaway from the race relations discussions that are occurring in America. And that's what's behind what we're doing, right? That's this whole idea of we have to work toward a better tomorrow, and we have to find a way to accomplish that better tomorrow. I tend to be in the camp that says that the way to accomplish that is not by reinforcing historical stereotypes and assuming that things of yesterday are the way things of tomorrow are going to be.
Right.
It has to be first of all, we have to set our goals up. We have to aim higher. And so I think that there is a way to chart a course, but I don't forward is what I'm saying. Chart a course onward and upward, and to just get progressively better, right? I mean, it's hard to ask for much more than that, but then to get progressively better. And I'm explaining this because I want to hear what you think. I just want to lay it out there. And so the idea is that, look, there were these horrible things that happened. And the question of what horrible thing we're talking about really just comes down to how far back we want to go, right? Are we going to go back, 200 years? Are we going to go back 2,000 years? Are we going to go back 500 years? There is an abundance of morally suspect choices that have been made by our forefathers and our ancestors that give us an abundance of life lessons to learn from if we take the time to look at it and care enough to look at it with a critical eye and say, you know what, I don't know everything, but I do know I don't want to be that, right? That's not the way to accomplish this goal. And so that's the position that and that's where I sit, and that's the way I've seen it. I'm not an expert. I'm just, your average dumb American. I'm not saying that, oh, my opinion's amazing. I'm just saying this is the approach that I've taken. What I know you said you haven't been exposed specifically to CRT, but you're familiar with the concept of, the systemic racism.
Right.
This kind of reaches into white privilege and how that correlates with free speech and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, why would you want to burden your kids with that? Giving them a reason to basically set them up to fail.
Right.
Like they see that as, oh, I didn't make it because of systemic racism, or because, the world's going to hate me, because I'm the way I am.
Right. Something's not right with me.
Yeah, this is not right, so I'm not going to make it.
Right.
Anytime I fail, this is the reason why. Why would you want your kids to have that burden?
Right.
If there was no burden there, why would you put that on them?
Right.
So,
and I imagine if you ask the people that wrote CRT, that wasn't their agenda, right? I don't think their goal was to
I don't,
burden people with. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think they had good motives. I just don't.
That's not something that you would teach kids. That's something their parents need to discuss with them.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, we can talk about historically things that have happened,
Right.
and we do talk about slavery in the southern states. We talk about the Civil War. we talk about the entire fight all the way through Jim Crow that
Yeah.
it took to get away from that and get away from those ideologically bent perspectives that were just sickness. It was just sick.
Right. I mean, it's okay. You can talk history. It's history. You can talk about the slavery.
Hmm.
You can talk about Asians. You can talk about Native Americans. Everything that's happened to them. That's what's in the books,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So that's fine. But when you start talking about like what's going on now
Hmm.
and what may be going on when you graduate,
Right.
that's not helping.
Right.
The younger generation coming up,
Right.
especially if they have no concept or clue of what's happening.
Mm.
Because I mean, I kind of was the same way.
Right.
I wasn't. I guess you were the same way too. We were, naive.
Yeah,
just,
we were. We didn't.
know.
We didn't. We didn't understand the larger world around us.
bliss and naivety.
Yeah, there was, but I mean, we also wrongly, however it may have been, we wrongly assumed that we understood the world, right? That the world was the world we'd grown up in, and in many ways, man, I wish it were.
It's not. I mean, it's not like a bad thing.
No, I wish it were. I wish
Mhm.
I wish that we hadn't had to wake up to some of those realities. That as we got older, there's this reality or this perspective out there, and you and I have never held it, but this perspective that there's a line between you and I that makes you and I different, and that and I don't mean different in the obvious ways, right? I mean, we get confused for brothers all the time, obviously, but
Mm.
but I mean, ideologically, the idea that I mean, you're my best friend. I'd do anything for you. So it's just this idea of there being a line between the two of us, or something, or
Invisible line at that.
between your parents, right? I love the way your dad has always put this. Your dad has always explained it as I never focused on that. That just wasn't what I chose to focus my energy, my thoughts, and my time on. And it's I love that perspective. Now, the problem is that if there is injustice occurring and there is people that are victimizing people, not looking at it doesn't make it better, right?
Right.
That doesn't remove or change the fact that victimization is occurring. But there has to be a way to sort of mature out of certain positions. And I'm not saying that racism is, although it is immaturity, I'm not saying I'm not trying to simplify that to a maturity level issue. I'm just saying that I think we hit the nail on the head. This is the realm of parents. This is something that parents need to be teaching their children about.
Right.
And when you allow schools to do it, you run the risk of not knowing what you're getting. You don't know what ingredients are going into the recipe.
You think it's sugar, but it's really salt.
Right. Or high fructose corn syrup.
Oh man, that's everywhere.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely, those are good points. So there's nothing wrong with like that being taught, but I wouldn't want that taught to my kids. That's something that you want to get in higher learning, like in college or university.
Right, where you'll study it in perspective, right?
Right.
Where it's studied in detail for the sake of understanding, and otherwise we're talking about ideological stances, and that is the domain of the parent. It's my job to indoctrinate my children. I'm joking, of course.
It's true.
It's true, but I'm joking. A lot of truth said in jest, I guess. No, that's one of the tricks of parenthood, is how do you teach your children to not only have opinions and to be willing to take moral stances on principle and act with integrity, but at the same time help raise them in a way that guards them from ideological capture, because that's a huge problem in today's day and age with the internet and social media, and the way that it has the ability to not just amplify minority voices but dissenting voices in a way that's unparalleled. We've never experienced anything like this before.
Yeah, I guess that is a challenge. Like, you got to keep, like, I think you already said it. Make sure your kid is an independent thinker. Don't always go along with the crowd.
Right.
You
The trick is teaching them how to think, not what to think.
Right.
Teaching them, well, you say that this person is this. What did they say? Tell me, let's look at it. Okay, well, what did you hear that person saying? Okay, well, people are calling this person a racist. Did that sound racist to you? If it's like what we saw earlier, the answer is yes, most certainly. If it's something else, did that sound like racism to you? Do you identify with what they're saying? Do we think that it's disparaging? Is it disadvantaging someone for an ideology or a some sort of categorization that I think you and I would both chafe at the bit to be strapped with? That's the goal, is to teach them how to think, not what to think.
Yeah, I think it's programs like this. I think they should be focusing more on, why little Johnny is in 10th grade and only reads at the 3rd grade level.
Mm-hmm.
Why not teach them some type of skill? I guess my own personal thing, we had like jobs for Tennessee graduates, which is basically just a class in my junior year where it taught you how to do tax returns.
Mm-hmm.
It actually got you thinking about what you want to do in life, and they actually had job shadowing.
Right. Nice.
I don't know how long that lasted. I know we were the first class to have it.
Who did you shadow?
Man, I couldn't think of anything.
Man, so real impactful.
Nah,
Great program. It
was
I'm
good.
just picking on you, man.
It's actually a good program because whatever you wanted to do, they tried to line my job up. And I said, since I didn't know who I want to be, I'm in junior high, I said DJ.
There you go.
So they sent me to the 92Q office.
There you go.
And
Sent you to a nightclub down on Broadway at 2 a.m.
Nightclub.
You said DJ. I'm just playing with you, man.
Said DJ. Hey, you got to meet some celebrities, national celebrities like Rick Walker and them, who
Boom.
back in the day.
Right.
Right. So, and it was very
92.9.
92Q.
92Q. There you go.
92.1.
92.1. Yeah.
That's a plug. Send us some Patriots or Patreons or subscribers.
Right. You're only interested in Patriots, huh? Oh man, I'm just playing with you. I'm kidding, man.
But it was a very good class to have. It taught you how to do things, especially like to fill out your own tax return.
Yeah, it's important. Balancing checkbooks and
you manage your money. So that's something that we should be focusing on, stuff like that. It's going to get you prepared for whatever you want to do. Either be an entrepreneur, it'll teach you how to set up your business, how to file, for a corporation if you want to incorporate or anything like that.
Understanding the difference between an LLC and a C Corp. Yeah.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. That's something that I think should start in high school, not something you should get in college.
I agree. Well, you should get it in college. You should be able to deep dive into it in college. But
Right.
I agree, it should start in high school. Those are basic, fundamental skills, but again, something that typically falls into the realm of parenting, right? Because that's something that I've never expected to rely on the school to teach my kids how to balance their checkbook or how to budget their money. How to balance your income with your savings, with your giving, right? Just having that.
Teaching math class,
Well, yes, math obviously, but my point is that's not something that I've ever just assumed the school would take care of. It's been part and parcel as an aspect of parenting.
Yeah.
So
I think that's something that the parent can reinforce. Maybe the student can teach their parents some things.
There you go.
Because we got a lot of parents running around, buy here, pay here.
Right, we do.
Paying 300%.
That speaks more to the part of town that you're in, but not you. I'm saying that we're in when you're seeing that. Yeah, because those payday advance places, that's a perfect example. They're predatory.
Yeah.
I mean, and they will chew you up and spit you out the other side, and they'll take your Yukon in the process, right? So you don't even have a car anymore now. And that I was just using an example. I don't have a Yukon, but
I thought it was some personal information you were giving them. But
right. Yeah.
Experiences.
I had a bad experience. No, I'm playing. Thankfully, I've never graced the doors of one of those places, but it's because I recognize what they are, and I knew it when I had when I heard someone talking about an investment opportunity with them, and I'm like, so wait a second.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, so you can invest in what type of returns are we talking? I'm like,
Oh
man.
man.
I'm like, does it not bother you to know what you're doing? And they're like, I'm like, yeah, but you're literally just you want to talk about redistribution of wealth. That's shifting money away from poor people. Literally, it's a deplorable business model. But
It
it
works.
it
It
it's a
works.
shame that it does. But it
Yeah,
does
if you have
easy
no conscience,
inconvenience.
no soul, you can do anything with that. But
Yeah, and it's a shame because it really does. It hits the people who can least absorb it. Right. It's and they'll end up in a spot where they're stuck, right? Their paycheck's spent before they get it, and they're just running. They're running a different version of the rat race that really doesn't get there, ever get them up, and it's a shame,
yeah, you're not getting to a higher tier. You're staying on that same level. So.
right? But that's a great example of something that should almost certainly be taught in high school, right?
Yeah.
I will relegate that sort of tidbit of knowledge to the federal government or to the state government. Let them teach them about predatory lending, right? Let them teach them about
Mortgage loans.
title ponds and
Right.
all of that stuff.
These are all the traps in life that
Right,
you face.
right. If it seems too good to be true, it's because it is. And if you you don't spend money, you don't pay to borrow money if you can help it, right? Except in isolated circumstances.
Unless you want to build your credit, man.
That's true, but your dad and I, your dad and I talked about this, and I said, you're from a different generation. I said, when your generation went into a furniture store, and let's say you were 25 years old, so I don't think they really even had furniture stores like that back in that day. But I said, went into a furniture store, and you're looking at different sofas. The one that if you saw one and it was $800 and you only had $400, you would go home and you would save for 3 months and come back with $800 if that's the sofa you're going to get. I said it's a specific type of hell that allows you to walk in and say, you know what, I'll take that, and I'll take the one next to it, and I'll take I'll take 3 of them, and all of a sudden you've bought 3 couches that you can't afford, and you're going to be making payments on them, and at a certain point it just becomes who's going to repo first, right? Who's going to call the chit due first because you're so far, you're extended so far, you can't handle it. And
you're just working on that third bankruptcy.
Right, it reminds me of looking at the usdebtclock.org because that's what it looks like when I look. Every time I see it, I'm like, this is like a payday loan place. Man, I bet their income's rising. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely that's something that's probably a subject we need to get into.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I imagine one of the first couple of guests that come in will be fertile soil for that particular conversation to grow because some of them, they're international, so they're from other countries, and when they come in, I'm one of the biggest things I think we're going to be interested in is so explain how you see American consumerism, right? Because this is what's one of those things that's uniquely American. The idea of our GDP being debt, right? Like the most generative thing we do is borrow money. And so I think we'll definitely have a chance to dig into that with them. I'm looking forward to it. So,
Consume.
well, anything else you want to touch on? I mean, because we legitimately only scratched the surface of the subject with CRT and First Amendment rights or freedom of speech. I think we can take that one and lob it out of the category of free speech and set that one more in the category of the expectations and rights of the state government when it comes to raising a private citizen's children.
Yeah. We said there's nothing wrong with that. It's, it should be taught, but not to kids. Not when they're trying to get out and trying to get ready to incur all that college debt.
Right.
You got something else to think about.
Right. For a degree that isn't going to make very much money when they come out these days, isn't going to pay for a standard of living that's better than the generation before them for the first time. this is going to be the first generation that it's not necessarily true that they are going to live better than their parents did and have access to resources and opportunities that their parents didn't have. Especially when you start talking about things like the advent of AI and the way that we are about to experience an economic upheaval of sorts that's going to fundamentally change our society in ways that I don't even think we can anticipate.
Yeah, you need to get on top of that instead of wasting your money going to college. Get that piece of paper so you can work for somebody else.
Now, just to be clear, there are some college tracks that are not a waste of money. I would prefer doctors didn't stop going to college. I would prefer, I was going to say attorneys, but we don't have to get into that. No, yeah, especially if you're just going to go get a general studies degree or a degree in theory of fly fishing.
Communication.
Communications. Media. Right. Yeah, no, I think that in college can be a good thing.
College, you retire.
You just have to pick your way through the university very carefully and deliberately, and make sure you don't end up. From what I hear, it's like a fly strip of the humanities departments these days. Like if you're not careful, you get stuck to it and can't get away from it.
And just use the online service and just get your degree online.
There you go. Just full of great advice today.
Everything's online. Everything's online. You got AI. You got Chat GPT.
That's right. Did he just advocate going to an online university instead of? Yes, kids. I think he did. You're not allowed to talk to my children, by the way. So
it's a lot cheaper. Where are they? Let me talk to them.
I'm joking around. Anyway,
the youngest one, right?
What's that?
You gotta get the youngest one.
Yeah, there you go. No, this subject is deep. I do want to find time to delve into it a bit more because it's worth discussing, right? The whole idea. This has been a big issue for the last 5 or 6 years. As you can see, Tennessee and other states have already legislated against it, and it's being treated like a human rights violation in reality, and it just doesn't strike me as the same type thing. Now, there has been an assault on our speech and the liberties that we have recently, and I think that we as a society have to be very careful not to cede any of those liberties because, like we said earlier, the freedom of speech, the right to freedom of speech is there for things that I probably am not going to like. And it gets real precarious when you start talking about introducing hate speech legislation that limits your ability to say things that I deem to be hateful. Because as you said, then the question is, well, who's the one that's judging and who's the one that's legislating and controlling? But at the same time, we need to toughen up as a people. We need to stop like the meme we were talking about with the door frame, right?
Yeah.
We need to toughen up where kids don't think that getting yelled at is violence, right? That's just
assault.
Why are you being so violent? I'm like, that's not violence.
Assault.
That's right. That's exactly right. You called me. You misgendered me. Like, wait, what? And I'm not advocating being mean to transgender people. I'm saying that the idea that that's violence or assault is just preposterous.
Yeah, don't do hate crimes. If you're gonna be mean to everybody.
Right, hate everybody equally.
Everybody equally.
There you go. That's such a lovely disposition. I've always respected that in you, Derek.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you exploring some of these things with me. It's been a pleasure, as always. And I think it'll be sometime in the next 5 or 6 days. We'll get the first interview lined up and go for that.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, sir. Until next time.